To continue off my previous landscaping videos that I'll link to below, I've been moving 5 tons of rock from there into this bed and around the corner into this bed. As you can see, we're making some progress here, but it's 5 tons of rock, so it's going to take a little bit. The other problem here is once we get this rock all the way over to here, this hose reel is going to could have some issues being usable buried in the rock. So let's see if we can build a platform for this guy out of scrap materials.
As I start breaking down this lumber into smaller pieces for our base, let's go over what I'm building here. I'm essentially building a mini deck. I built it here in Shaper because I actually had a really rare occurrence. As many of you know, once you get into woodworking, somehow magically, you develop a bin of cutoffs and random scrap wood because you might need it someday. And that was the case for this one. Back in 2020, we built our deck and I saved these 5 pieces of Trex decking because I might need it someday, quote unquote. In reality, when you look at my deck, there's only about 4 pieces on the deck that if those specific pieces broke, this spare Trex decking could fix. Otherwise, I'm buying a new board, it's a warranty kit, it doesn't matter. But 3 years later, here's your use case of that you might need it in the future. I saved these pieces of decking and now I can use them for this project. I didn't know it in 2020 I need it, but this is where we're at right now. So we're building a mini deck, and right now I am cutting the headers for the platform, similar to building a deck, and next we'll be cutting the joists. For this build, we need 7 joists total. Technically, 2 of them are double up, so we need 7 pieces that act as the joists. And to be honest, this is 100% out of convenience and laziness, because with the picture frame we're building here, you can have the edge of the picture frame and the edge of the middle boards land on that one 2x4, but you have to be very precise on that. Plus, we need a middle support anyways to make sure it doesn't bow. That's how we got to 7 here. We got 2 on the outside, doubled up 2 for the first joist, and then 1 in the middle just to hold up the middle. I chose to do the middle 3 boards next just because they're simple, straight manual cuts, don't have to do anything fancy with them. Somehow I do have one very small piece of slotted Trex decking left, so that's perfect for the middle section. And then for the other 2 middle pieces, it will be of the non-groove Trex boards that I do have the slot cutter bit for a router that we'll have to add in the slots for to be able to use hidden fasteners for. You know, just like the deck project, somehow I have a couple hundred extra hidden fasteners available. So if you guys have any ideas on what to do with an extra couple hundred Trex decking hidden fasteners, besides build another deck, which I don't have a spot to do that currently, leave it below in the comment section. What would you do with extra Trex decking or hidden fasteners, or both? For the outside of the picture frame of this mini platform, mini deck, whatever you want to call it, we're going to have to cut these boards twice. Once I'm just cutting them to length at 28.5 inches, and then we'll have to go back and put miters on each board for 45 degrees to create that picture frame effect. I'm a little concerned about how wobbly these boards have been. They curve a little bit, so I'm not sure if I can get enough clamping pressure down to flatten them out, or how that's going to react as we cut into these boards here. But we'll see how cleanly I can get these boards to stay flat. Overall, it's not the end of the world. Most of it will be covered up because it's intended to hold a hose reel on top of it. So low risk project here of just using the available scrap materials. It should last a long time because it's composite decking outside, not to worry about it. But then if it's not absolutely perfect, I'm not gonna be crying in my sleep about it. As I set the miter saw for the first 45-degree angle, I'm just going to take this very carefully because I don't really have that much extra material here, but I'm going to cut a 45-degree and just kind of inch up on it and then repeat it for all the boards. We'll just cut off thin little wafers here of Trex decking until we get that perfect corner and hope everything decides to stay flat for the assembly coming up here. And since this is a lot of the same cut repeated even more than once for every board, we can skip to the end here where do the other side and then just move on to assembly. I skipped a step. Instead of assembly, we gotta route some grooves in our Trex decking here to account for the hidden fasteners. As you see, I am setting the height of the slot cutting bit based off of the one factory grooved board that I had. This way I know it'll be perfect for all the ones we're cutting it in. Let me know in the comment section below if you have this issue. As you may be able to see with the lime green, I have a Ryobi router table and underneath it is a Ryobi router. And this router seems to always need two configurations to actually get it to go, meaning as I'm saying it up here, it's at the correct height, it's not moving. And I will be doing a test cut here where looking at the slot itself, it drops about a quarter of an inch while it's moving. And then I go to reset it where I want it to, and in that second time, which just brings it up to where it was originally, that's where it's now like locked in. Let me know in the comments if I'm doing something wrong or if this is just a Ryobi thing and I just need to buy a router from a real company like Bosch or DeWalt. I'm open to either case here. I'm just wondering if anyone else had the same issue with Ryobi. Yeah, as you may be able to tell in that with that pass there that it's, yeah, that's my look of disapproval, and hoping that this doesn't continue because I don't have that much scrap material here to waste on a cheap router. Yeah, with the second test cut, you can see that the outside cut there is much lower than the middle slot there as it's supposed to be. So this router's always done it. I can't figure out why it doesn't just stay in there the first time you do it, which overall with that bit spinning and if it's moving, it's probably super dangerous. Again, if you have any thoughts on my issues there or recommendations for better routers, router tables, etc., leave them below. Let's talk about it. Now that our height issues are out of the way, let's go and speed through the rest of these boards real quick here just before this router changes its mind on if it wants to hold the correct height or not. Now we're on to assembly, which if you built anything that requires a square, if you're framing a wall, if you're building a deck, I'm just putting layout lines here, basically 1.5 inches on the outside for one 2x4, moving it in 1.25 inches, and then do a 3-inch spacing for the double wide one, then moving it in 6 inches for the center, then mirroring it on the other side. I'm just pre-drilling all my holes. I'm using 3-inch deck screws on this. I'm not going to take the time to use hurricane clips or hurricane ties for this, because again, it's on the ground to hold a hose reel, not an actual deck, and it's less than 3 feet by 3 feet, so I think hurricane ties might be a little bit of overkill. This whole thing's overkill, so take that as you will there. But yeah, I'm just pre-drilling these holes just to make life a little bit easier. Just gotta build this on a table and move it. Yeah, watching someone drill holes is kind of boring, especially when you can't even see the holes with the back of the screwdriver there. So let's go and get to the drive fitting here, and let's just speed through this part. Before we do anything crazy here, let's go and make sure all of our boards fit relatively where we expect them to, spacing wise. Shouldn't be any shock here, but just don't want to accidentally commit after screwing in half the boards and it's wrong or something like that. As you can see, we got those doubled up boards already screwed together just for support. Again, this is 100% the lazy method right here. You know, you could get everything precise so it hits on one board perfectly, but with the math of this layout here, I was going to buy the lumber anyways. It wouldn't have saved me buying a board for this base anyways. Instead of making sure everything is super precise for that, I can cut 2 extra boards and then screw them together, I think. We'll see. We'll see if it works out or not. Just keep watching as we dry fit this whole thing here. With the dry fit successful, let's start screwing this together. Really not much to say here. I wish I was a better storyteller that could make screwing pieces of wood together super exciting here, but it's just me on an IKEA table here assembling this. So just to keep things in line and try to keep this as flat as possible, I'm just using a clamp to keep the 2 planes at the same height. And then it's, basically 2 screws for every board on each side and repeat it. Who knows how many times. This isn't a math channel. This is cutting wood and throwing it together and using scraps and telling the wife you're right because you finally used the Trex boards that you had in the garage for the last 3 years with no idea on how you're going to use them. So I digress. Let's keep going here as we screw this together and try to keep this relatively square. As we can see, it's getting a little squirrely here with the pressure treated lumber, but it is what it is. It's woodworking. And now the last board. Everything's screwed in on the other side, so this part should go relatively easily here. Just loading up all the screws so I can just go rapid fire down the line and we have a base where we can start making our deck for this hose reel. And just like the base, before we fully commit to screwing anything down here, let's dry fit to make sure everything lines up. I did account for inch overhang of the decking over the base of it just to match how our deck is built and just to fill out that style. At this point, this is what I'm realizing with cutting in the miters and some of the joys of working with composite decking. It may have added some wiggles to the composite decking and coming up momentarily, I don't know this yet, is I'm going to try, to make life easier, I'm going to try and glue with epoxy the outside picture frame together so it's one big piece instead of trying to keep it all in line, but it fails miserably. Not to bury that lead there, but with cutting to 45 degrees, the decking itself reacted and got a little bit more crooked. I had it had it glued together and it just broke apart afterwards. I used the accelerator spray, let it sit for a little bit, but still it it didn't want to cooperate that way, which is fine because I also do have an entire bucket full of color match screws too from that deck project. It's not going to be as clean as I wanted it, with just perfect connection points held together with the epoxy and the glue, but I'm perfectly fine with color match screws holding down some of the outside pieces in this project too. Again, this is like we're recycling, reusing, reducing, taking the scrap material that is, is expensive and just reusing it for other things that it was designed to do here. So if I was to do this over again, this part would probably be designed differently to make the corners easier. There's only so much you can do with, extra cutoffs and whatnot. So, just setting expectations appropriately there. You can do it square. If you have square pieces, you can, do smaller miters to do a picture frame-ish. It depends if you want the mitered corners or not and how you want the look to be at the end. But on this one, I committed to the mitered corners, and those are special. That's what I've learned the hard way, both the deck and with this mini deck. Well, now that my epoxy idea has failed, let's line this up with our hidden fasteners. Before we dive into hidden fasteners, to go into the double up boards ad nauseum there, you can see how our picture frame is resting on one, and then there's a full width available for the middle section. When you're building a deck, this is generally recommended just to make life easier. You have the double width of a picture frame like that, so the picture frame itself is fully supported, and then the ends of the composite decking have somewhere to land on. Obviously, every manufacturer tweaks these recommendations a little bit, but generally this is the end goal for your layout. We're with that double joist there for both the picture frames. We were right on the line on if you technically need that center board or not, but again, it's one of these cases here that board's not going to hurt anything. Oh no, I used one more board and 4 more deck screws and 3 hidden fasteners. In this case, that's a good thing because now all those extra materials are getting out of my garage. But with Trex being recommended to have 12 on center, and then that distance there from the inside of the picture frames being right at that line, I just did it for safety to make sure this thing was well supported. I didn't want bows or anything like that, or breeding ground for mosquitoes or something like that. But yeah, beyond that, it's just going to be lining everything up here and getting those hidden fasteners in for all the inside ones, and then the outside row of the picture frame, unfortunately, will just have to be the color match screws. Since the epoxy failed and everything else to do it there, we just need the color match screws to put the force to kind of keep everything in line. I'm using color match screws. I will put the link to whatever their formal name is down in the description, so you can go find them. But it's not the Cortex plug screws where you screw the screw in and it goes below the height of the deck board, and then you use the color match plugs and plug it that way to hide them. These are a step below technically and of them, and it's just similar concept. The screw themselves lines up with a deck color, and it's official color matching from the screw vendor, and then that aligns up to the official colors of Trex, and they support other manufacturers too. Again, the theme of this build is reusing what we have. I have a couple hundred hidden fasteners left over and a couple hundred colored mesh screws left over from this build. But yeah, they do make a bit that I was too lazy to find for this video that screws them into the perfect height, so the head of the screw is perfectly in line with the deck board, and then when they're like that, you can't see the screws unless you're really looking for them. Since I was too lazy to find that bit wherever it disappeared to in the last 3 years, I just decided to pre-drill a lot of these holes here to keep them uniform. As you can see there, I'm just changing my mind on that one and where to do it. But yeah, I'm gonna go through, I'll pre-drill all the holes just to keep everything in line, then put these screws in. You don't need that bit as long as you're careful, but if you're doing a full deck, I would highly recommend the special bit. Screw 107 out of 300, you're gonna get sloppy if it hasn't hit already, and then it's gonna be messed up. So in this case, I'm using less than 20, so I think I can maintain enough self-control to screw them at the perfect height. And if not the end of the world. You can back it out a little bit too, or again, it's for a hose reel. So I'm using color match screws that I otherwise don't have any other uses for. And now time for the beauty picks. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed building this mini deck. It didn't turn out exactly as planned, but I'm still happy with it overall. And if you would like to build one yourself, I will have the plans and the shaper files on my website. There will be a link in the description. If you liked the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Until next time, keep building.